hello to everyone out in Parent-Tween Connection land and beyond. We are getting together again for a fantastic conversation that I personally am looking very forward to with a woman who is becoming a friend of mine, I would say. Sonali V. I will let her say her last name. She's coming up to us all the way from Thailand, and she is the founder of Forward Together Parenting. I said that right, correct?
You did.
Okay, good. So, first of all, Sonali, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here, Clarissa. I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited for this conversation as well.
Fantastic. So for those of you who maybe this is your first conversation that you're tuning into, this conversation is part of a 5-week-long Empower-thon that we're running as our inaugural fundraiser for the Parent-Tween Foundation. Now, if you've never heard of Parent-Tween before, Parent-Tween Connection is where parents go when they don't know where to go. We have community for parents and we have community for professionals, and we work to introduce you to folks like Sonali. And the Parent-Tween Foundation is our charitable division that helps to bridge the financial gap that so frequently exists between families and the professionals and the services that can help them. So we're aiming to have 100 professionals join us between Mother's Day and Father's Day here in the US. And our goal is to raise funds to launch the foundation. So yes, at the end of our conversation, I'm going to put a shameless plug in that says, hey, if you just learned something from Sonali, say thank you by making a donation through the link in the description of her talk. We're in our private Facebook group. We're also streaming to our YouTube channel and to LinkedIn. Her link is everywhere. So the best way that you can say thank you to her for her time today is by making a donation to the Parent-Tween Foundation. So again, Sonali, thank you for your time and the knowledge that you're about to share. And the reason that I've been looking forward to this is that, oh boy, did your description of this conversation take me back 30 years to interactions between my mother and me. I always felt like she didn't hear me. She didn't care about my emotions, my feelings, this, that, and the other thing. There was more than one or two slammed doors or I hate yous along the way. What was that?
I said, or the go aways, or the get lost.
All the things, right? The things that, like, I was a kid, I was just trying to find my way, figuring out how to communicate to her. And I have to imagine that she felt profoundly rejected.
Yeah. And I imagine that you did too.
I did. And that certainly wasn't the intention. But a lot of what drives me personally as founder of Parent-Tween Connection and the foundation is that rejection never got repaired. And we never got to a place where we had what I would feel was a loving, caring, adult mother-daughter relationship. And so things like this, I'm like, hey, if we can help other families avoid some of what we went through, then like my life will have served purpose. So thank you. And so
you know, can I comment on that for just a minute? Is it all right?
Yeah, please.
Because I think that's what you just shared, Clarissa. I know what that feels like. And I think many of us as parents, we remember that when we come to our kids being tweens and teens and we start to experience it, I think part of us tenses up and clamps up because we're like, oh my gosh, this is when it started between me and my mom or between me and my dad, right?
Yep.
And so we're like, I just don't want that with my child. I want it to be different. And yet we don't know a different way, but that's why it hurts so much, is because we remember that disconnect between us and our parents, and our hearts do not want that at all between us and our kids. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's start from like, why does this even happen in the first place, right? Like I have my theories, but you're the parenting expert. So what's your take on why the teen or tween rejects their parents? And to be clear, it's not just like a one-off. It's like, It feels relentless, right? It feels never ending. And in some cases, it really is never ending.
Yes. Like you said, that disconnect still lives between you and you're like, it still lived there, right? And it can, so yes, exactly. So why does this happen? I think sometimes what we think is that we have to go through this phase with our tweens and teens, that it's just something that we're going to have to deal with, that they're going to reject us, and that it's going to be hard on us, and that it's going to be hard on them, and that it's kind of got this stigma of like, well, it's just one of those things. It's a rite of passage in some ways. Does that make sense? And what I want to do, what I do with the work that I do, is instead of looking at I use the behavior to peel back to the underlying need of what's really going on. So when a child says, go away, or why do you have to, or geez, mom, what they're actually doing, what they're needing, it looks like rejection. What they're actually seeking, if we peel back to underneath, it's individuation. It's separation. It's not disconnection. It's separation, saying, oh, hey, here, I'm trying to figure out who I am in this world as a separate individual from you. Now, our teens and our tweens think that means that they need to reject us to figure out who they are, right? And then what happens? But what happens is that doesn't feel good to them, and it doesn't feel good to us. So it doesn't really separate them as an individual. It doesn't even allow them to identify who they are. They're just rejecting us. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so what happens is oftentimes, like you said, there's this cycle, this cycle that keeps going on and on, where they reject. And you might be that parent that you're like, oh my gosh, I remember this happening between me and my parents. I don't want that for my kid. So I'm going to be really calm and really patient. I'm going to do it. And then one day it's one too many door slams. It's one too many like go aways or get lost or why do you have to say that, mom, or anything like that. And then we just are like, I've had enough. Why, like, why do you have to do that? And then what happens is our child, if we look at it, is in that energy of rejection, right? And then what happens is, they're like with the getaways, the get lost, the slamming doors, the you're so whatever. And then we're like, why do you have to do that? Or, hey, speak to me differently. Or it's not okay to talk to me like that, right? Then what we do is we step in with them into the energy of rejection. Does that make sense? So now you and your child are in conflict. Now both of you are in the energy of rejection. Now this is so the first need for a child is to find them. So form their sense of identity of who they are in the world as a separate individual from you. That second need for them, and the reason they keep poking until we snap, is a sense of belonging. Well, if they can't get that met by being a separate individual, at least if we both are feeling rejected, at least we have that, it's like a pseudo connection.
Right. It's a commonality, at least.
Yeah, there's a commonality, but it's not real connection. So even though both of you are sitting there feeling rejected, your needs are not being met. Neither their needs are not being met. So they have those needs for individuation, like to be an individual, to be a separate person from you, and also to remain with that sense of belonging. But those needs aren't being met. But now both of you feel rejected. So it feels like a temporary ping. It feels like a temporary hit of that need, because at least I'm not alone in feeling rejected, or at least I'm not alone in this space. Does that make sense? But it doesn't actually satisfy the core needs. So how I like to draw this out, I'm going to draw it out for you to show the different needs. So I call this a Venn diagram of needs. So, and what it is it's two circles. Oh, those are not the best circles in the world, Clarissa, but they'll work. Okay, so the go away, I'm going to use that as the words that they're saying. So on top of the Venn diagram, I put the words, the behavior that you're seeing. So I put go away. And what I said there is that's that sense of they want to know they're a separate person. They want to form their sense of identity of who they are in the world, right? And also the
interjection. If you are tuning in and you're in our Facebook group, feel free to ask questions or comment as we go along, and I'll field those as well. If you've got questions for Sonali, I can ping them to her. I forgot to say that at the beginning. So, okay, back to the Venn diagram.
Yes, back to the Venn diagram. Okay, so here's the go away. Okay,
right,
and so that's it, separate, and the individuation. Then here's the you can't talk to me like that, right? That's how we end up responding,
right?
Eventually, we try not to, or we have the parent, like some of us actually just withdraw. And we're like, okay, from like 14 until 20, this is where we're going to be. I'm just going to pull back and not engage, right? And
Uh-oh. We've lost Sonali at a high point of the conversation. So we're just going to hang tight. And I'm going to ask, can anybody else out there, can you relate to any of this? Oh, she's back.
I'm back. I'm not sure what happened there.
No worries, you're back.
It was like something went wrong. And I'm like, apparently.
Technology gremlins. It's all good.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, and then we reject too.
Yeah.
I'm just writing this down. It's going to be belonging. Okay.
Yep.
So here's the conflict. Go away. You can't talk to me like that. So we're rejecting too. So this conflict feels like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they're facing that conflict of their needs. Actually, it's an internal conflict as much as it's an external conflict. They're like, I want to be my own person, but I also want to belong to this family. Does that make sense? I want to know that I feel similar feelings to my family. So it feels like this conflict, a ping pong back and forth. And so what we want to do is, instead of them having to ping pong back and forth between the need for individuation and the need for belonging, is we want to bring them together. So pull those into the center. So like that they can be separate, a separate human, a separate person from us. That's what the whole teen tween years is about. And they also still belong. Can you see that?
Yep.
There we go.
I got it.
Okay.
Yep. I can see it. You've got the individuation and the separation and the belonging in the middle of the Venn diagram, that both can be possible. They don't have to be distinct.
Exactly. And so that's what we want to do, because otherwise what we end up doing is riding that emotional roller coaster with our child. We feel rejected. We want to include them, but then we end up stepping into the rejection energy too. And then, well, in that moment, it feels good because you've said something, but you've gotten a pseudo sense of belonging instead of real belonging. So that's what's going on. These are the underlying needs behind what we're experiencing in the teen years. And now we can meet those needs in some easy, light, fun ways instead of it being hard and heavy.
Okay.
So
tell me, because I know, and I know
right?
You and I talked about this before we went live too, that like, while you are approaching this in an easy, light, fun way, because it needs to really to be easy, light, and fun in order to engage teenagers. But it's also going to be applicable to marital situations, work situations, all kinds of things.
Yes, exactly. Because really, when we think about that individuation is that connection to ourselves. Who are we as a person? And that sense of belonging is, who are we? Like, how are we in relationships? We all need both. And I think we all really struggle with both. Sometimes we feel challenged by both. So with our teenager, sometimes we think, oh, I need to set aside a chunk of time with them. I need to do this thing. And, like, how do I pull them out of their room, pull them out of this space that they're in so that we can connect? Does that make sense? Just saying, how can we do this thing so we can connect? I'm going to flip that for you. We're going to take an unconditional stand for connection. That whatever's going on, we can connect because we're going to connect. So maybe you've got that kid that normally comes home and shuts their room door, right? And this day, your 13-year-old didn't shut that door. It was a crack. It was like they left it ajar. Just a little bit. They forgot. Oh my goodness. Or they just went into their room and they were putting something down. You can walk by and you can say to them, hey, just want to let you know, I feel like a hug coming on. So if you don't want that hug, you've got about 3 seconds to shut that door. Otherwise, like, fair game. And so then what happens, and I've seen it happen with several of the parents that I support, is then that kid might look at you at first a bit like you're nuts. And then they might fake shut the door. That's that need for separation, for I have that power to reject you. They want that sense of empowerment. And then they open it up and they might let you hug them for a split second. Then they go back and they shut that door. That's fine. Focus on the 30 seconds of connection that you have, because that's what brings stability to them. It could be if that door is shut already And you've been getting a lot of go aways, get lost, what do you want, right? Because we all know what those sound like. Right? So, and maybe you've got your their siblings and they're younger outside in the living room area, or you've got your partner. And you just go knock on their door once a day. This doesn't need to be 6-7 times. This doesn't need to be, it's just once a day, 30 seconds, once, twice a day, letting them know, just be like, and you knock on the door and be like, hey, I'm feeling really loved and appreciated out here. I was wondering if I could get a, what do you want, or go away. So I remember that, I remember to humble myself and that I'm not liked everywhere. Can I get a go away? Right? And they will crack up. They will do their best not to, but they will find that hilarious. And that's all you need, because instead of rejecting their go aways and get lost, what I'm doing is I'm receiving them. The opposite energy of rejection is receiving. I'm saying, come on, bring it. I've got it. And so instead of me hesitating and waiting and bracing for it, I'm actually priming the field for them to bring it forward. Does that make sense?
You're taking all of these concepts, Sonali, and like literally standing them on their heads.
Yes.
It's such a different approach.
Right. And it's just the 30 seconds. So we don't need to go for the hour at first. If you've got a kid that's really shut down, that's all we need. And then when they give you and they will do it, they'll probably be like, get lost, but kind of giggling through it. And you're like, that's better. So
yes, I've been waiting for the get lost all day.
I know. I've been wondering where that was. Or, you can call them up on the phone and it's like, what do you want? And be like, just that. I just wanted to, I needed to remember that. So it's not don't talk to me like that. It's like, I was waiting for that. And that brings them, they got to play with that individuation, with that separation from you. And they also got to know they belong, because we're not rejecting them, we're receiving them. So that's how we then create a stable sense of belonging, a stable sense of receiving, of unconditional acceptance.
Give me more, because I know parents are going to want more.
Okay. So let's do I want to flip on our head when we think the thought, and this goes back to, you were mentioning before we came in here that, what was it, yesterday, right? You'd had an interaction.
Oh yes. My husband and I, who have together 20 years, very solid, and still have moments where we, get a little frustrated perhaps, and
of course
had an interaction that I did not love the message that he shared with me, and I responded with a probably not so loving, don't yell at me. Or something to that effect.
Right. Which then focuses on the behavior component, like don't yell at me, which there is a time to focus on the behavior component, but here right now. So the don't yell at me is a bit rejecting, right?
Yep.
Not meaning to, you're establishing your boundary, like, hey, I want to be spoken to respectfully. That's what you're actually trying to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Right. That's what you actually wanted, was like, don't talk to me that way, is I want to be spoken to respectfully. So when we say don't talk to me that way, Clarissa, what was the thought you were thinking about how your husband was speaking to you? Was it, what's the word? Or he's being...
I'm not sure I can say that on a live stream.
Okay, he's maybe disrespectful.
Yeah, let's go with that.
So instead of a label, what's the energy? Okay.
Yeah.
So, disrespectful, dismissive, like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that work? Did I fill in a word for you?
Yeah, that's a publicly appropriate term.
Right. Okay. So when you're thinking that other word, if you peel back, what you're actually trying to say behind that other word that you were thinking was, you were disrespectful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how I describe boundaries is boundaries are energetic. Boundaries, limits are excuses to disconnect. Don't talk to me that way. Does that make sense? We're saying, this is good, I'm good, you're bad. This is right. This is wrong. Does that make sense? And when we do that, we put up these walls between us and other people. And you notice with like the media, I have that wall, Like I have that wall between you and me right now, but I'm kind of back here behind that wall. I'm kind of afraid you're about to say something to me. Does that make sense? Because I'm still poking out, wondering if things are okay out there. So it doesn't really lead us to feel safe, emotionally safe,
Right.
regardless of what
Right.
happens. So that to me is being limited. So I distinguish limits from boundaries. I use different words specifically to notice, when am I being limited? When am I judging somebody else or judging myself? And when am I being boundaried? Boundaries are platforms beneath us. They allow our relationships to rise. They give us permissions to love. They keep us safe, clear, and focused. Boundaries are about hearing our heart and honoring that voice through the action that we take. Boundaries are telling us this is how our relationship can grow and deepen. Does that make sense? So boundaries are permissions to love, permissions to connect. So when we talk about boundaries, it's not so much about the thing, it's about the being. The boundary here is respect. So when you think he's being so disrespectful, right? We want to flip that to, you respect yourself. He respects you. Okay. So that's the boundary. There is respect. Now, if the boundary is respect and the behavior that you're seeing is something different, what we want to do is acknowledge both. Hey, okay. So what did he like? Oh, he said something to you and be like, hey, you just, I know you respect me and you did just say this thing to me. So I know there must be something else going on here. So connecting heart to action. So holding both. Because sometimes what we do is we look at that action and be like, oh, that means that he's disrespectful. We just dismiss that part of us that knows unconditionally that we're worthy of respect. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Or we hold that that respect space and then we try to pretend like he didn't say that thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm saying hold both. Oh, I know there's respect between you and me. And you did just say that. So what's really going on here? And we can do that with our kids too, with their teens and tweens. So when you heard me say that, what did that feel like in your body, Clarissa?
It's much more calm.
Right? Yeah. Because what doesn't feel safe to us is feeling like it is the thought that we're being disrespected. That's why our boundary is respect. It also doesn't feel safe to us to pretend like that thing didn't happen because it did. So safety lies in acknowledging both. Okay.
That's awesome. Well, and like you say, it's true with the children, with youngers, and it's true in partners. It's true in, in marital relationships. It's true again in workspaces. So much of this holds true.
Yes, that something happened, and we know they respect you, right? So the child that walks away when you're talking, hey, I know we have respect between us, and right now it's hard for us to have a conversation. So I know there's something else going on here. And sometimes it's the acknowledgement. Sometimes we as parents want to get in there, especially with their tweens and teens. And when we feel anxious that they're going to disconnect from us forever and ever, we want to get in there and we want to fix it. And instead, just acknowledge it. So there must be something going on here. We don't need to ask what it is. Let's first just work on the acknowledgement so that they feel safe enough, because they're probably worried that they're going to be scolded or punished or rejected, right? Which doesn't feel good to them if they start to share what's actually going on. So just by acknowledging it, it makes it safe. Like, there must be something going on here. Let's do this. Let's take a pause. We can come back. We can talk after dinner, or we can check in after dinner.
And I'm going to interject. You are the third amazing conversation I've had today for Empower-a-thon. Every single presenter in their own respective topic or conversation has talked about taking a pause. It's so important, and it's so hard to remember to do sometimes.
Well, and especially if we group, like there's those sayings, right, Clarissa? Like, oh, don't go to bed angry, right? Or don't do this. But actually, like, sometimes we need a bit of space when we're dysregulated and our child is dysregulated. We need that space. We're not able to come together and try, like, we just both need that space. It's not a permanent pause. It's not a stop. Does that make sense? It's not okay, let's not have this conversation because we can't handle it. It's a pause. Let's take 5 minutes, or let's take an hour, or hey, let's pick this up tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Well, and that also makes me think of an article that I read today, actually, written by I think a psychologist or a therapist who was talking about the way that she interacts with her child. Now, granted, she was talking about a younger child, but I think the point stands that especially if these things come up in the evening, we're all tired. It's been a rough, if it's been a rough day, or it's later in the evening, or whatever the case is, it's way easier to become emotionally dysregulated when we're tired. And
Yes.
so the article indicated, okay, I acknowledge that you have this comment or this question, whether it was from a conflict or not, but if it's a heavier topic or a more important topic, going, okay, yes, we do need to talk about this. I hear you. And I also think that right now we're both really tired, and now probably isn't the best time to have a really productive conversation about it. So why don't we plan to talk about it tomorrow? Or maybe we'll go get donuts on Saturday morning, or we'll go for a hike on Saturday morning when we don't have other distractions, and we can give it the time and the intention that it deserves.
Exactly. I love that you brought up that example, because remember I said boundaries are about safe, clear, and focus. So you didn't just say, let's talk about it later. You said, let's talk about it on Saturday over donuts. So you've got the clarity and the focus. You might be like, let's go get donuts. We can spend an hour together and we can sort this through. Does that make sense? And what I love about that is it actually sends a message to our kids that, okay, this thing that we're processing, it's safe for it to be in limbo. That's a safe experience. We don't have to resolve it right now to feel safe. Safe is unconditional. Does that make sense? We will resolve it. And between now and then, we are okay. Yeah.
Love it. So we've been talking about a lot of like the ways that we can respond in situations, like respond versus react, pausing, keeping those safe, clear boundaries. What other steps can we take to, because that wall that you talked about, right? Like not only like how can we prevent the wall from being built, but if it's already there, right? And we've got a pattern of all of these go-aways, I don't want to talk to you, slamming doors. What are some other steps that we can take to take down the bricks out of that wall?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question. So the first thing is to do is, instead of, like, that expression, it's not the big things in life, it's the little things, right? I love that expression because there's so many different ways that you can apply it. Like even here, it's not doing a big thing with your teen or tween. It's about creating stable, small interactions that are like, they're stable, they're secure, they're solid. They create that solid sense of belonging and receiving that I was talking about. And so it can be things like this, so 30 seconds, once it, like knocking on the door and having some iteration of that, the humorous, light, sarcastic play, right? That meets them where they are. It can be, and that's one way to do it. So instead of saying, oh, I need to go take them to this dinner and do this thing, that may not be where you and your teen are right now. And the 30-second interaction will actually build up safety and security and stability in your relationship, so that you then can do the walk in the park or the dinner together. So that's one thing that you can do. The second thing that you can do is start to notice some of the things that they love. So is there a certain music, or is there like a band that they're into, or a certain type of joke? So my son is into the Yo Mama joke. So one day what I did is I know, because that's what, right? And so we joke back and forth, and I'll be like, your mama, and then I'll be like, wait, what? Hang on. and it's just that funny bit. But I've done things like I've printed off a joke and stuck it in his backpack, so he's got something funny for during the day. So little things like that, meeting them where they are. If they like a band and they come out with a new song, be like, hey, I saw this new song out, and just sending them that message or that communication, so that they know that you're there. It's the stability of it. So it doesn't have to be a big interaction, but for them to know that you're unconditionally there is what they need the most through the teenage years. So it can be a text message, be like, hey, this song just came out. Thought you might like it. I just had a listen and I thought about you. Or something to that effect. But
right.
Small, stable things that aren't overwhelming for us as a parent. We're like, oh, I need to sit through an hour dinner where they're going to complain about me. No, just a 30-second interaction builds up safety for you and for them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I think that's a really good note to wrap up this conversation with, because I can't believe it, but it's already been a half an hour. And I know a lot of families or a lot of parents don't have much more than that to listen. If they can even make it this far in one iteration, they may have to come back along the way. But Sonali, thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. Like I said, I wish we'd have had, a Sonali version of, 30 years ago for me and my mom. But I know that folks are going to get some good information out of this. And so if you're listening, I promised you that there would be a shameless plug to invite you to make a donation to the Parent Tween Foundation. So if you got some good stuff out of it today, even if you just laughed along with us, the link to Sonali's donation page is in all of the descriptions of everywhere where we are. So the best way you can say thank you is by making a donation. And we do have a little bit of a friendly contest, if you will, among our speakers, that if they are the fundraisingest, it's the word now, it's kind of like winningest, but fundraisingest, we have offered that if they have a particular family focused organization that they would like us to make a donation to, we will make a donation in the amount of 20% of however much they help us generate to an entity of their choice. And I didn't see that you had one specifically when we set today's date. Did you have one in mind, or did you want to get back to me?
I will get back to you on that. I love that, Clarissa. I wanted to say how much I appreciate you. And because even setting this up between Mother's Day and Father's Day in the U.S., what a beautiful concept. And your fundraising.
I'll shout out on that one. That credit for the dates actually does go to Jen Lebo, who's one of our trusted experts. And she was also one of our speakers last week when she's like my thinking partner on a lot of things. And I wanted to find a time frame and I couldn't figure it out. And that was actually her idea. So thank you. And I will pass that along to her because that was her stroke of brilliance.
Yeah, I love that. That's just beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if you love Sonali's approach like I do and you'd like more insight, you can find out about her. Again, her website, her Instagram, her Facebook, all the places are linked in all of the descriptions in our Facebook group, on LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. So definitely check her out, as with any of the other speakers we've had. And Sonali, again, thank you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you, Clarissa. And thank you to the parents that joined us today. This was good to be with you.
Awesome. Have a great one, everybody.
Bye.